A breakthrough for scientists after they had a 20-minute conversation with a humpback whale.
Scientists fed 9,000 sperm whale recordings into an AI system built to crack encrypted languages. And when the algorithm finished, what appeared on screen wasn't noise, wasn't sonar, and wasn't anything the team had a framework to explain. The entire MIT lab went quiet, because the AI hadn't just found patterns, it had found something that looked disturbingly like the building blocks of human language. A group of scientists had a 20-minute conversation with a female humpback whale, buried a mile beneath the Caribbean Sea, produced by animals with brains 6 times larger than ours in a system running millions of years before the first human drew a breath. The very first output, the result nobody was ready for, didn't just prove whales communicate. And it forced every scientist in that room to ask a question none of them were prepared to answer. The origin of an impossible question. The office belongs to marine biologist David Gruber. He's playing back whale recordings he collected while studying jellyfish in the Caribbean. Sperm whale clicks, the rapid burst sounds these animals use to communicate in the deep ocean. In other words, more of a vocabulary. And so we're want to develop the software for that. Underwater jackhammers, researchers had always called them functional noise. Nobody had ever treated them as more than that. Gruber isn't even there for the whales. He's there for the jellyfish. But across the hall, MIT cryptographer Shay Goldwasser hears the noise drifting through the open door. She stops walking, tilts her head. He stands there for a moment with the focused stillness of someone whose entire career has been spent finding hidden order inside apparent chaos. Then she walks in and says it plainly. "That sounds like Morse code. Have you tried using machine learning to decode it?" Gruber hadn't. Nobody had. Sperm whale vocalizations had been cataloged, named, assigned probable functions. Danger, food, follow me. But no one had ever run them through pattern recognition systems that had spent the previous decade transforming how humans process language. Goldwasser specialized in breaking encrypted codes. Decades spent staring at streams of data that looked random and finding the mathematical structure underneath. Those clicks were not random. They followed rules. She didn't know what rules, but the rules were there. As Goldwasser introduced Gruber to Michael Bronstein, an AI researcher with a specific insight. The same deep learning algorithms powering large language models like ChatGPT could be applied to whale communication. The math didn't care what species produced the data. It just needed scale. Millions of data points, consistent methodology, years of recordings from identifiable individuals. Whale research had none of that. Scattered recordings, small samples, inconsistent methods. After our 20-minute period of playbacks was over, we turned off our speaker, and she continued to vocalize back to us even as she was leaving. The only way to make this work was a project no single institution could run alone. In 2020, Project CETI was born. CETI stands for Cetacean Translation Initiative, funded by the TED Audacious Project with partnerships from MIT and Harvard, UC Berkeley, and over 15 institutions worldwide. The team built a permanent research station in Dominica, a small volcanic island in the Eastern Caribbean, where generations of sperm whale families have returned to the same waters for decades. These weren't anonymous animals. They were known individuals, photographed and tracked for years, recognizable by the shape of their flukes and the texture of their voices. They had the technology, they had the funding, they had the animals. Here's where the story stops being a setup and starts being something else entirely. 156 CODA. First, you need to understand how sperm whales actually communicate. They don't sing like humpbacks. They click. Rapid sequences of clicks called codas. Patterns ranging from 3 to 40 distinct beats are the basic unit of sperm whale communication. And before Project CETI, scientists had identified 21 different codas. The working assumption was modest. Each coda probably signaled something simple. Danger food. Follow me down. That assumption did not survive first contact with the data. When MIT researchers fed 9,000 audio recordings into machine learning algorithms, recordings gathered from real whale families in Dominica's waters over years of fieldwork. The algorithm processed the files and returned an output that stopped the entire research team cold. Nobody in the room was prepared for what the algorithm returned. The whales weren't using 21 codas. They were using 156. And those 156 codas weren't simple on-off signals. They had internal structure, tempo variations, rhythm changes. The extra clicks woven in as ornamental elements that shifted meaning, the way a tone of voice shifts the meaning of a sentence in human speech. The AI had found what researchers now call the sperm whale phonetic alphabet, a finite set of building blocks combining into patterns of potentially infinite variety. Here's what makes this stranger than it sounds. Human language combines a finite set of sounds, phonemes, into infinite combinations following grammatical rules. English runs on 44 phonemes. From them, we build millions of words, billions of sentences, every idea any English speaker has ever expressed. Small parts, infinite arrangements, rules governing what can follow what. The sperm whale system works the same way. And we really got nothing until this particular encounter. We were not targeting Twain. We just happened to come across her. Our results show there is much more complexity than previously believed. Dr. Daniela Roos from MIT told reporters. This is challenging the current state-of-the-art of beliefs about the animal world. That was the first shock. If you've ever wanted to be in the room when humanity finally understands what another species has been saying, stay here. Subscribe to this channel because when Project CETI decodes the first complete whale sentence, this is where you'll hear it first. The second shock was worse. Vowels beneath the surface. Linguist Gashper Bigush at UC Berkeley had one job within Project CETI: analyze the acoustic properties of individual whale clicks at a resolution nobody had attempted before. Not just pattern and sequence, but what was happening inside each individual click at the level of frequency, resonance, and in the geometry of the sound itself. He sat with the spectrograms for a long time before he said anything to anyone. What he found made him question everything linguistics had taught him about what separates human language from every other form of animal communication. The whales were producing vowel sounds, specifically an A vowel like the A in father and an E vowel like the E in sea. And they were producing diphthongs, gliding combinations of vowels that shift mid-sound. The way the OY in boy moves from one position to another in a single continuous motion. Not two sounds, one sound that moves. Read that again and let it land. Sperm whales living in complete darkness a mile beneath the surface of the Caribbean Sea have independently evolved vocal structures that mirror the defining features of human speech. Not as a rough analogy. Not approximately. The acoustic signatures match. Vowels are what separate human language from almost all other animal communication. Birds chirp, dogs bark, dolphins whistle. But humans modulate airflow through a complex vocal tract to create precise frequency patterns we call vowels. And those vowels are the load-bearing architecture of every word we speak. That capacity was supposed to be ours alone. And here's what makes it genuinely unsettling. Sperm whales don't have vocal cords. They produce their clicks through a completely different biological system. Nasal passages, air sacs, specialized fatty tissues in the forehead, different machinery, different evolutionary history, completely independent path, same destination. How we proceed in trying to understand our non-human species communication. In the past, researchers thought of whale communication as a kind of Morse code, Bigush explained. However, this paper shows that their calls are more like very, very slow vowels. This suggests a complexity that approaches human language. The argument for human uniqueness always rested on language, not just the fact of communication, but the specific architecture of it. Complex grammar, symbolic thought, the ability to combine finite elements into infinite meaning about things not present, events not yet happened, ideas with no physical form. That capacity, the story went, was why we built civilizations while every other species followed instinct. The sperm whale phonetic alphabet dismantles that story completely. Pragmatics, grammar, language. Here's what makes this stranger than the vowels alone. The whales don't just possess a phonetic system. They use it contextually. The same whale produces different codas depending on who they're talking to, what behavior they're engaged in, and what's happening in the water around them. That isn't signal variation. That's pragmatics. the branch of linguistics concerned with how context shapes meaning. That is grammar operating the way grammar operates. That is language. Here's what makes it concrete. Researchers have observed specific codas appearing consistently in specific social situations and nowhere else. A coda produced between a mother and her calf during nursing does not appear in the same form during a group hunt. The coda used when two adult females greet each other after a long separation is not the coda used when the same two animals are coordinating direction. The system adjusts to situation. That is not a signal system. That is communication with register. Shane Giro has spent 13 years on a research vessel off Dominica watching specific whale families he knows by name. When he talks about what he observes, he's not speaking from a conference room or a published paper. He's speaking from years of sitting on the water at dawn, watching the surface for the V-shaped blow that means a family is coming up. It's hard not to see cousins playing. While chatting, he says to not see moms hand a calf over to a babysitter and exchange a few words before heading out the door, so to speak, to go eat in the deep ocean. The exchanges can last an hour. Multiple whales clicking in overlapping sequences, voices weaving across each other through the water. In sperm whale society, it is apparently not rude to speak at the same time. But the conversations have turn-taking. As they have rhythm. They have the recognizable structure of dialogue between individuals who know each other well. And this is where it gets genuinely unsettling. What are those conversations actually about? Nobody knows yet. But the next discovery changes what that question even means because it tells you how much brainpower is behind them. The largest brains on Earth. Sperm whales have the largest brains of any animal that has ever lived on this planet. Larger than elephants, larger than blue whales, which are themselves the largest animals alive. 6 times heavier than human brains. Dense with neural tissue organized in structures neuroscientists are still working to fully understand. Brain tissue is the most metabolically expensive material in biology. The human brain consumes 20% of our body's energy while accounting for 2% of our weight. Evolution does not build and maintain expensive structures without purpose. When you see a brain that large, there is only one reasonable question. What is it for? Here's what we know it's used for. Sperm whales live in matrilineal family groups, organized around grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters with relationships persisting across decades. The elder females are the repositories. They hold knowledge of migration routes, feeding grounds, and social histories between family groups spanning ocean basins. When a matriarch dies, that knowledge dies. Researchers have documented what follows: calves that struggle, roots that fail, families that fragment. They pass down cultural traditions, not instinct. Culture. Some communication patterns that vary between family groups, the way dialects vary between human communities separated by geography. The family off Dominica does not communicate the way the family 100 miles north does. The differences are not genetic. They are learned. They are transmitted through exactly the system Project SETI is trying to decode. And they coordinate hunts in total darkness. 3,000 feet down under pressure that would kill an unprotected human instantly. One whale drives prey, another positions. Roles shift in real time. This is not instinct. This is communication-dependent coordination. What are they talking about? Nobody knows yet. And Project SETI will say that plainly. The AI can map structure, catalog codas, and track who speaks to whom. But meaning requires context, matching specific vocalizations to specific observed behaviors at scale. That database didn't exist before this project. It's being built right now. The machine that listens. Here's what building that database actually looks like, because it's not what you'd picture. Researchers attach advanced biologgers directly to whale bodies. Suction cup devices recording high-fidelity audio while tracking depth, temperature, movement, and GPS location simultaneously. 3 synchronized microphones per tag. Multiple tags across one family group at the same time. The tags distinguish individual animals and capture conversations happening across different bodies, moving through water in different directions. The dataset they're building is unlike anything that has existed before. Hundreds of hours of recordings from identifiable individuals. Animals researchers know by name, whose family histories are documented, whose social relationships are mapped. Every coda matched against what the whale was doing at that moment, who it was talking to, what was in the water around them, what depth, what conditions. The AI doesn't just look for patterns in sound. It looks for patterns in sound plus context. Here's what nobody expected about that approach. It's working faster than the team projected. The social context layer is the key. Because researchers know which whales are related, which are dominant, which calves belong to which mothers, the AI finds patterns invisible to pure acoustic analysis. This sound followed that sound becomes this specific individual said this to that specific individual and then this happened next. That's not signal analysis. That's the beginning of translation. And when translation comes, it won't just change science. The weight of a language. In the 1960s, biologists Roger Payne and Scott McVeigh discovered that humpback whales sing complex structured songs. Their research sparked the Save the Whales movement. Public awareness of whale intelligence drove the Marine Mammal Protection Act into law. Humpback and gray whale populations on the edge of extinction began recovering. Project CETY believes proving sperm whales have language could trigger a shift of even greater magnitude. Because this time it wouldn't just be songs, it would be sentences. It would be proof that something out there has been thinking, remembering, and talking to its family. And we've been sailing over them for centuries without a second thought. When we can talk about whales and how important their grandmothers are, or how important being a good neighbor is, or the importance of cultural diversity in society, that really resonates with people, Jarrow explains. Sperm whales are intensely matriarchal. Elder females accumulate knowledge across lifespans of 60 to 70 years. When a matriarch dies, that irreplaceable store of information disappears. But there's something darker underneath the optimism. If sperm whales have language, if they're capable of complex thought, cultural transmission, and emotional depth, then what does commercial whaling become? What does a ship strike that kills a whale on a cargo route make us? What does ocean noise pollution from industrial shipping and military sonar disrupting whale communication across entire ocean basins say about us? Legal scholars are already asking the question this research forces. If we can demonstrate that whales discuss ideas, make decisions, maintain relationships through linguistic exchange, do they deserve legal personhood? It's being argued in academic law journals right now in anticipation of what Project CETY might find. David Gruber has addressed the implications directly. Little by little, the sperm whales are divulging their secrets of how they are communicating to us. Roger's research highlights the impact science can have on society. His finding that whales sing led to the Marine Mammal Protection Act and helped save several whale species from extinction. He didn't finish the implication. He didn't need to. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone in the field is thinking. If sperm whales have language, and if they encode meaning, transmit culture, and discuss the conditions of their lives, then every commercial whaling operation didn't just kill marine mammals. And every ship strike isn't just a wildlife accident. The entire legal and moral framework governing our relationship with these animals was built on the assumption that they don't have language. Project CETY is dismantling that assumption one recording at a time. What they might be saying. Here is the question researchers return to when the data stops and the silence starts. The one they don't publish in papers, but ask each other after long days on the research vessel, watching the water for the V-shaped blow. Sperm whales have been on this planet 60 times longer than modern humans. They have been communicating in this structured, complex, contextually sensitive system, and for millions of years before a single human existed to hear it. They were here before our ancestors walked upright, before the continents settled. They have watched the oceans change in ways that dwarf anything in human recorded history. And they have watched the most recent change, the one we caused, unfold faster than any shift in the millions of years they've been listening. They have watched species disappear from the waters they hunt. They have watched noise levels rise as industrial shipping expanded, the constant low-frequency roar of propellers disrupting their communication across hundreds of miles. They have watched the chemical composition of their environment shift as carbon dioxide dissolves into seawater and the pH drops. And they have navigated the increasingly frequent collisions with cargo ships on routes that didn't exist a century ago. Collisions that kill animals who have no evolutionary framework for a 2,000-ton steel object moving at 20 knots through their habitat. What have they been saying to each other about all of it? The alphabet has been found. The vowels identified the structure mapped by algorithms trained on 9,000 recordings refined by the best minds in linguistics, cryptography, and artificial intelligence. working together on a problem none of their fields could solve alone. But meaning is still locked inside the dark water. When Project CETY finally cracks the code, and the researchers who have spent years building this believe it is when, not if, what will the first translated sentence contain? And a mother describing a hunting ground to her daughter, the same ground her grandmother described to her. A grandmother passing down a migration route that has fed the family for 40 years. Knowledge that can't be written and survives only through language. A warning about something new moving in the water above. Or something none of us have thought to anticipate because we spent so long assuming we were the only ones with things worth saying that we never seriously considered what everyone else might have been saying in our absence. The AI is still listening. The whales are still talking. And somewhere in the 9,000 recordings already processed, and the thousands more being gathered right now off the coast of Dominica, the first complete meaning is waiting to be found. When the translation finally comes, it will not just be a scientific discovery, it will be a reckoning. The moment humanity realizes it has had neighbors all along. Neighbors with language, with memory, with culture, with the largest brains on Earth and millions of years of accumulated experience in the ocean, and spent centuries hunting them nearly to extinction without once stopping to ask what they thought about it. If you want to be here when that moment arrives, subscribe because when the first whale sentence is decoded, this channel will be the first place it lands.